How does it feel?
Epic.
Popcorn and IMAX is a new bread and circus, and Gladiator II is the star attraction. Here's why the sequel is blowing away the box office. If any cast member in Gladiator II all but guaranteed the film's box office success, it was Denzel Washington as Macrinus. For one thing, the actor is so selective with his roles that moviegoers pay attention whenever he pops up in a new film. He's also one of the few remaining movie stars, as evidenced by his extraordinary box office track record. Out of his last 13 movies, 11 grossed over $57 million domestically, while 8 cleared $80 million in North America. Meanwhile, Denzel's pre-2009 films include box office hits like American Gangster, Remember the Titans, and Philadelphia. For movie-going audiences, Denzel is connected to both highly acclaimed Oscar darlings as well as crowd-pleasing dramas. Plus, unlike most esteemed dramatic actors, he hasn't headlined a huge sequel like Gladiator II before.
I think this is the biggest film I've been on.
With no Marvel or DC blockbuster under his belt, there's something special about seeing Denzel star in a big-budgeted movie on IMAX screens. So, seeing as he's one of the biggest movie stars on the planet, it's no surprise that he helped Gladiator II reach its full box office potential. By the time Wicked and Gladiator II premiered in North America on November 22nd, the actors involved in the films were already sick of the term Glicked, which smashed the two titles together. Glicked was meant to herald the arrival of a new Barbenheimer, but people connected to the blockbusters found the term ridiculous. However, pairing up these two tonally opposed features did get some extra hype going. The week these projects dropped, a Fandango poll revealed that nearly 2/3 of people surveyed were extremely intrigued by the idea of watching Gladiator II and Wicked back-to-back. More importantly, theatrical moviegoing is something that cannot survive on one film alone. People who enjoy the theatrical experience usually want to go back and experience it again. The tremendous hype surrounding Wicked put all eyes on people's local multiplexes and undoubtedly placed Gladiator II on many radars. After all, a rising tide lifts all boats, especially when that tide is confined to a nearby Cinemark. Gladiator II wasn't just a legacy sequel to any old movie, it was following up a Best Picture Oscar winner. When it came out in 2000s, Gladiator was one of the highest-grossing movies of the year. It also dominated at the Academy Awards, taking home 5 Oscars while enduring for years to come.
Are you not entertained?
Then there were the serious movies made in the mold of Gladiator, like Alexander and Troy, all of which tried to make the Gladiator lightning strike twice. Thanks to all that, Gladiator's esteemed place in pop culture was assured, and no other 21st century historical epic has come close to overtaking its pop culture notoriety. Expectations were incredibly high for Gladiator II, as audiences wouldn't settle for a lackluster sequel. Yet, despite the risk of a potential backlash if the film didn't live up to the hype, revisiting the world of Gladiator proved too enticing for people to pass up. From Twilight in 2008 to Frozen 2 in 2019, 11 consecutive movies opened to $60 million plus domestically over the pre-Thanksgiving weekend. Dropping a film over the pre-holiday weekends not only helps create a lofty 3-day bow, it also positions a blockbuster to play over the ensuing Thanksgiving week. Gladiator II continued this phenomenon with finesse. Although the film narrowly missed out on being another $60 million plus pre-Thanksgiving opener, its opening week box numbers were still great. Let's briefly compare Gladiator II to a recent failure, Terminator Dark Fate. By the time Dark Fate arrived in theaters in November 2019, the Terminator saga had been exploited well beyond its capacity. Over the 16 years before Dark Fate's debut, there had been 3 other 21st century Terminator sequels, as well as a multi-season Fox TV show. It's no wonder then that even the return of Linda Hamilton failed to get fans all juiced up for more. At that point, there was nothing special in seeing the Terminator name on a brand new movie or TV show. Gladiator II, however, didn't arrive with such a problem. Since there have been no TV shows or spin-offs, Gladiator II feels special. Unlike Dark Fate, it didn't have to contend with numerous subpar extensions. This allowed the sequel to benefit from Gladiator's enduring legacy. 2024 has been a quiet year for Paramount Pictures. Aside from the family movie Transformers 1, which came out in September, the studio hasn't launched a major new wide release since A Quiet Place Day One at the end of June. That 5-month gap may have left movie theaters a little emptier than usual, but it also ensured that Paramount put all of its marketing resources behind Gladiator II.
You will be my instrument.
Reports of how much it cost to promote Gladiator II run as high as $100 million, a staggering sum for an R-rated epic with zero family appeal. And seeing as the film opened the same day as Wicked, it certainly gave Paramount an added incentive to put all its resources behind launching the sequel. In the end, concentrating exclusively on this feature for months paid off for Paramount. Gladiator II had the second biggest domestic launch for a Paramount Pictures movie since Top Gun: Maverick in May 2022. At the risk of beating a dead horse, Terminator Genesis and Dark Fate both exemplified the wrong way to market legacy sequels. These follow-ups hinged their marketing campaigns on promising more Arnold Schwarzenegger, which in theory would make them bulletproof nostalgia fests. However, the tactic made it difficult to distinguish one follow-up from the next. Gladiator II might have fallen into that trap if it had featured Russell Crowe somehow coming back from the dead for more vengeance. Instead, the plot shifts to a grown-up version of Lucius and a slew of new characters occupying familiar Roman territories. Only Connie Nielsen and Derek Jacobi return from the first Gladiator in a prominent capacity. By constantly emphasizing the new characters played by Denzel Washington and Pedro Pascal, Paramount was able to reassure prospective moviegoers that Gladiator II was something new and fresh. The new characters were also shown in many of the trailers and posters, thus giving audiences more reason to see Gladiator II. In the end, this technique proved to be mighty lucrative at the box office, as audiences were offered a nice blend of both old and new. The biggest Ridley Scott movies of all time reflect one truth: if audiences know the legendary director is doing an epic production full of visual effects, they show up for it. Of course, flops like The Last Duel and Exodus, Gods and Kings also exist in this space, but more often than not, Scott's reputation for delivering the goods usually wins out.
He's a visionary at what he sees and how he puts it together.
His presence on Gladiator II was especially reassuring given how closely he's connected to the original film. The sequel wasn't some new artist trying to do a Ridley Scott impression. It was the original maestro coming back to the Colosseum for more grisly Roman carnage. That prospect, combined with Scott's track record, did a lot to inform Gladiator II's big opening weekend. Scott's enduring box office allure was also seen just 12 months before Gladiator II opened. In late November 2023, his historical epic Napoleon dominated that year's Thanksgiving box office and even had a bigger 3-day opening weekend than the Disney animated film Wish. A staggering result given how the studio typically dominates Thanksgiving weekend. Basically, people heard Ridley Scott was doing a grand Napoleon movie and they showed up in huge numbers for it. If a film like Napoleon could put up strong numbers, then Gladiator II was a virtual cinch to crush the box office a year later. That's the power of a filmmaking legend like Ridley Scott. Reviews for Gladiator II have been somewhat mixed, but mostly positive. There's not much hatred for Gladiator II, but many critics found it a bit too derivative of its predecessor. Some also had negative things to say about Paul Mescal's lead performance. In a shrewd move, however, Paramount Pictures started screening Gladiator II a month before the film's release. Initial reactions were scarce, but a handful of social media reviews were extremely positive. Oscar buzz for Denzel Washington started brewing almost the moment these reactions hit the web, while hopes arose that Scott had created something that lived up to the beloved original. More nuanced reactions followed by the time Gladiator II's release approached. 4 weeks before its proper theatrical debut, Gladiator II was greeted with largely positive marks, giving the sequel ample time to generate a positive reputation with moviegoers. Furthermore, Gladiator II opened in most international territories a week before its North American launch, where it scored terrific box office numbers. That helped the film receive even more positive headlines before it began playing in multiplexes across the US. So, Paramount Pictures made sure the film was out there getting acclaim before it opened in North America. The weekend Gladiator II debuted, only 2 other movies, Wicked and Red One, made a splash at the box office. That fact highlights the lack of compelling new releases that people want to see on the big screen, including other R-rated action movies. There have been plenty of high-grossing R-rated movies, sure, just not in the first 3 weeks of November 2024. So, those seeking a movie that got their adrenaline pumping were largely out of luck. Gladiator II swooped in to become the savior these moviegoers have been looking for. While Ridley Scott's latest movie probably would have registered as a big cinematic experience under any circumstances in a theatrical landscape devoid of other R-rated action, it had no other competition. If you wanted to see heads getting chopped off, Gladiator II was your only option.
This is war! Real war!
Over the next few weeks, barely any other movies will challenge Gladiator II's supremacy. The refusal of major studios to give movie theaters a steady lineup of new releases is a big problem for the industry, but it did ensure that Gladiator II could become a box office hit. In the post-Avatar world of 2010 and 2011, studios that wanted their films to be taken seriously as major movie-going events largely embraced digital 3D. In 2024, the equivalent to that phenomenon is premium large-format screens. Major tentpole films are practically required to be released in IMAX, Dolby Digital, or Cinemark XD if they want to be taken seriously. Unsurprisingly, Gladiator II was shown in these formats during its domestic launch. However, it did come with a wrinkle, as Wicked and Gladiator II had to share IMAX screens during their opening weekend, but seeing as Gladiator II was penciled in for a November 22nd release first, it appears the sequel got preferential treatment for IMAX screens. The film was even shown at the biggest IMAX screen in New York City. Whatever behind-the-scenes battles went down for premium screen real estate, Gladiator II clearly flourished in the format. IMAX ticket sales alone made up 17% of its domestic opening weekend, accounting for roughly $9 million of its North American launch. Other large screen formats contributed another 11% to its domestic gross, or roughly $6 million. That means a little over a fourth of Gladiator II's domestic opening weekend sales were on account of these pricier viewing experiences. Putting a grand spectacle like Gladiator II on these large format screens clearly inspired people to come out in droves. That said, IMAX remains a powerhouse of modern box office success.